Caitlin Clark just helped the Indiana Fever turn a highly anticipated matchup against Paige Bueckers and the Dallas Wings into a statement night. And the way Indiana responded after falling behind is what has everyone talking. Paige Bueckers came ready to make a statement of her own, but the Fever completely changed the momentum after halftime. What looked like Dallas' game suddenly became Indiana's game, and by the final buzzer, the Fever had walked away with a 98-87 victory. But this wasn't just another win. It showed something important about Caitlin Clark and the Fever heading into the most critical part of the season.
We kind of had to slug through some tar a little bit early to find ourselves in the second, but in the second half, we shot 66% from the floor, 50% from the three-point line, and 6 for 6 from the free throw line. See? 29 and 10.
Yeah! Caitlin Clark, the real MVP, not just of the Indiana Fever, of the entire league. Caitlin Clark, the GOAT, the real motherfucking MVP, put on a show versus Paige Bueckers and the Dallas Wings.
Points per game, 7th in the league in scoring. Here's the league's 3rd leading scorer in Caitlin Clark. Spinning on Bueckers, they go one-on-one, and Clark wins the matchup.
Let's start with Caitlin Clark. The biggest thing about this game wasn't simply how many points Indiana scored. It was how Clark and the Fever responded when things weren't going their way. Dallas had the momentum early, and Paige Bueckers was making her presence felt. But Indiana didn't panic. Instead, the Fever stayed aggressive. They moved the ball, created better opportunities, and started making Dallas work harder on every possession. That's where Caitlin's impact becomes so important. Even when she's not taking every shot, defenders have to respect her range. That opened space for her teammates, and Indiana was able to take advantage of that space. Kelsey Mitchell provided scoring. Aaliyah Boston gave Indiana another inside presence. And the Fever's defense became much more active as the game went on. The result was a second-half surge that completely changed the story. For Indiana, that's the kind of response you want to see from a team preparing for a playoff push.
Love will win. Kindness will win. Humility will win. And Caitlin Clark in the third quarter will win.
Now let's give Paige Bueckers the credit she deserves. Because despite Dallas losing this game, Paige absolutely did not disappear. She finished with 29 points and continued attacking Indiana throughout the night. That's important because this was another opportunity for Bueckers to show that she can perform when the spotlight gets bigger. And she did. The problem for Dallas wasn't simply Paige. It was what happened around her. Indiana's second-half pressure forced the Wings into difficult possessions, while the Fever kept finding ways to score. That's the difference between having a great individual performance and winning a basketball game. Paige can put up huge numbers, but Dallas needs the entire team to stay consistent when opponents make their biggest runs. And against Indiana, that run eventually became too much to overcome. That's something Dallas will have to learn from, because if these teams meet again later in the season, the pressure will be even higher.
Think about this. Caitlin Clark scored 29, had 9 points at the half. So that tells you she dropped 20 in this game in the second half. So let's start right here. Sophie Cunningham. Let's check it out right here. The pass out to Soph, way downtown. Boom. Knocked it down.
And now comes the biggest question. What does this victory actually mean for the Indiana Fever? It means confidence. Indiana showed that it can fall behind, make adjustments, and completely change the direction of a game. That's extremely important at this point in the season. Every win matters. Every possession matters. And every time the Fever prove they can handle pressure, their confidence grows. For Caitlin Clark, this is another important chapter. For Paige Bueckers, it's another lesson in a rookie season that has already generated enormous attention. And for WNBA fans, this is exactly the kind of matchup people want to see more of. Two young stars, two competitive teams, and a league that continues to grow around them. Indiana got the win this time, But the Caitlin Clark versus Paige Bueckers story is far from finished. If anything, this game may have just made the next chapter even more interesting. So tell me in the comments, Caitlin Clark or Paige Bueckers? Who would you build your franchise around? But there's another part of this game that deserves even more attention, the confidence of the Indiana Fever. Because when you look beyond the final score, this wasn't simply a game where Indiana happened to score more points than Dallas. It was about how the Fever responded when the game wasn't going their way. Dallas came into this matchup with confidence. Paige Bueckers was aggressive from the beginning, and the Wings showed that they weren't going to be intimidated by the Fever or by the spotlight surrounding Caitlin Clark. For stretches of the game, Dallas looked comfortable. They were finding opportunities. They were making Indiana work. And every time the Fever tried to create separation, Dallas had an answer. That's exactly what makes the second half so important. Indiana didn't need to panic. They needed to stay patient. And eventually, the Fever started finding the weaknesses in Dallas defense. The ball moved faster. The offense became more organized. The defensive pressure increased. And suddenly, the energy inside the game completely changed. That's where Caitlin Clark's value becomes so important. Clark doesn't necessarily need to score on every possession to influence the game. Sometimes, simply having the ball in her hands forces the defense to make a decision. Do you stay with her? Do you help? Do you leave another shooter open? Do you pressure the ball and risk giving her an opportunity to attack? Those decisions create openings. And Indiana was able to take advantage of them. That's something Fever fans should be excited about. Because if Indiana can get consistent production from multiple players while Clark controls the offense, this becomes a much more difficult team to defend. You can't simply focus on one player. You have to defend the entire lineup. And that's exactly what happened as the game progressed. Dallas had to deal with Clark. Then Mitchell could hurt them. Boston could create problems inside. And every extra defensive rotation created another opportunity for Indiana. That's how leads disappear. And that's how games turn around. For Dallas, this is where the lesson becomes important. Paige Bueckers can have a huge scoring night and still need more from the team around her. That's not a criticism of Paige. It's simply the reality of basketball. One player can change a game, but 5 players have to play together to win it. And against Indiana, the Fever eventually found that team rhythm. That's why the 98-87 final score matters. It wasn't just that Indiana finished with more points. It's that they were able to control the game when it mattered most. And that's the kind of experience that can build confidence inside a young team. Imagine what this does for Indiana going forward. Players now know they can fall behind and still recover. They know they can face a talented young star like Paige Bueckers and still execute under pressure. They know they can survive momentum swings. Most importantly, they know that their best basketball can come after adversity. That's a dangerous thing for an opponent to learn about the Fever. Because the next time Indiana falls behind, the other team won't necessarily feel comfortable. They'll know the Fever can come back. And that mental advantage can be extremely valuable. For Caitlin Clark, this is another chapter in her development. For Paige Bueckers, it's another chapter in hers. And for the WNBA, it's another reminder of how much young talent is changing the league. The spotlight will continue to follow these players. The comparisons will continue. Fans will continue debating who is better. But the most interesting part is that we don't need to decide that right now. We can simply watch both players grow. Tonight, Indiana got the better result. Dallas will have to learn from it. And if these teams meet again with even more at stake, don't be surprised if the next chapter is even more intense. Because this matchup already feels like something that could become a major WNBA storyline for years to come.